Floch is not a villain character in Attack on Titan. Most people who watch the show see him as a power-hungry extremist who is willing to needlessly kill anyone who gets in his way. A coward who survived where better people died. Unlike most characters we see in the show, he saw the cruelty of the world from the bottom. He wasn't exceptionally brave, strong, or smart. He wasn't special in any way. He was just another nameless soldier who happened to survive. He was not written to be a villain, but to be a realistic depiction of how a normal person would react to the world around them. His second chance at life was something he chose to make full use of, and that's what this video is about. First time we're introduced to Floch, he's presented as a nameless soldier who served as a sharp contrast to the main cast. He hadn't faced any major battles and yet had this false bravado and eagerness to fight. He was motivated to finally reclaim the walls and fight for his people. But we all know how that battle went. The Beast Titan pretty much massacred the new recruits. He saw Titans, death, and despair for the first time. With his first experience on the battlefield being so intense, he obviously had a mental breakdown, falling to his knees and crying, feeling hopeless. He was weak and fearful, and yet later on we see him muster the courage to join Erwin's charge, fully expecting himself to die. But he survived, while his heroic comrades he rode beside were now corpses on the battlefield. He remained the only one to miraculously survive. This made him realize a harsh truth. Survival is random, not earned for your good deeds. Strength and heroism don't guarantee anything. Later on, he sees Eren and the others practically fighting over the syringe, and Floch calls him out directly for this, saying they were acting like the syringe was theirs to decide over who would get it. From his perspective, while countless soldiers had just thrown their lives away for humanity, Eren and the others were letting personal attachment influence a decision that was supposed to be about humanity's survival, not their own feelings. This battle was also where his worldview started to shift. After surviving, he had this obsession with meaning. To him, deaths needed to count for something. After his first battle ended in such a cruel and brutal manner, Floch feels insignificant. While all his brave comrades died beside him, a coward like him was able to make it out. When speaking to Levi's squad, he makes it clear that he knows he's fodder, and that he's an expendable recruit worth nothing. And yet, he couldn't understand how the heroes of humanity could act so selfishly with a syringe, making an emotional decision that the rest of humanity would just have to accept. He felt the need to say the things that needed to be said, regardless of how uncomfortable they might be. His open contempt towards Armin and the others is also why people see him as abrasive. But he's just calling it like he sees it, and he isn't wrong with his viewpoint. He clearly voiced his own disapproval and everyone else's for choosing Armin over Erwin. Floch was adamant about Erwin's revival, not because he was a hero, but because he was a necessary evil. Because while Eren fought for Armin, who was his friend, a kind person and someone hopeful, Floch was thinking about someone who could actually drag humanity forward, and someone who could make the necessary sacrifices. He understood Erwin's mindset and realized humanity needed a devil capable of making the hard choices to ensure their survival. To him, Erwin was willing to abandon his morality and dreams for results, and that ties into Floch's later ideology in Season 4. Seeing Erwin willingly throw away his own dreams and the lives of countless soldiers for humanity's survival fundamentally changed Floch's perspective on sacrifice. If so many people had died for a future they would never live to see, then surviving meant inheriting the responsibility for those deaths. Floch felt responsible for giving meaning to his fallen comrades as a sole survivor. This is where his identity shifts slowly from someone who survived by accident to someone whose survival must mean something. This isn't really a villain mindset. This was more of a desperate attempt at seeking a higher purpose. His responsibility eventually turns to conviction. What begins to define him in Season 4 is not something new, but something inherited. Erwin's mindset of abandoning morality for results never left him. Floch simply takes that idea and pushes it to the extreme. If humanity needed a devil to make the hard choices, then survival itself would eventually demand even harder ones. In a way, Floch starts to resemble Irwin's ruthless leadership. In Season 4, after a 4-year time skip, we see Floch at the end of his arc. In those years, he worked behind the scenes to ensure Paradis' survival by any means necessary. When Eren reveals his plan to unleash the rumbling, Floch sees it as the only logical outcome left for the island. The world already made its stance clear. They weren't going to leave Paradis alone. There was never any real path to peaceful resolution. From his perspective, the island simply didn't have the strength to face the world head-on, and trying to negotiate would delay the inevitable. So to him, the rumbling wasn't just blind destruction. It was a way to secure the island's future. During the raid on Liberia, when John tells Floch to take it easy with the destruction and keep civilian casualties to a minimum, Floch lashes out. From his perspective, this isn't just a military target. Liberia is the origin of everything that's destroyed Paradis for over a century. All the Titans that appeared on the island and tormented the aliens for over 100 years came from here, and now the roles are just reversed. While John sees civilians, Floch sees consequences finally returning to their source. He isn't calm or reasonable here. Like any normal person in his shoes, he's emotional and angry. And that's the point. He isn't some strategist standing above the conflict, but someone who was forced into it and adapted to survive. Even during the port battle, when he realizes what Armin is up to, from his perspective, they're trying to sabotage the island's survival. He obviously wasn't going to let that fly, because he and Anna were doing this for Paradis' survival, and they were throwing that chance of survival away for their morality. This would enrage anyone in his shoes. But of course, neither side could take the moral high ground. Floch and Armin don't operate on the same assumptions. Armin believes in the possibility of understanding and negotiation, while Floch operates on probability shaped by history he's lived through. From Floch's perspective, after 2,000 years of hatred, peace is not something you can rely on. It's a gamble Paradis can't afford. This is also why Floch is so heavily judged. He uses force, fear, and control to rally people, and it works. Young recruits follow him because they're convinced that they're fighting for survival. The audience also watches with hindsight. We see outcomes and consequences that Floch doesn't have in the moment. So his actions might feel extreme to us, but to him, they're responses to his immediate world. You can argue his methods go too far though. Assassinating Zachary, poisoning the military, and how he treats the volunteers, and that's all valid. But from his perspective, the old military leadership was stagnant. 4 whole years passed with hesitation and internal conflict. So when Eren finally acted, Floch just followed that momentum. Not to be some ruler, but to remove what he saw as obstruction to the island's survival. He wasn't just trying to build power for himself. He was just trying to ensure that the island and his home survived. And this is where his character becomes consistent. You don't have to agree with his actions, but everything he does aligns with one belief: that the world will not spare Paradis, and Paradis cannot afford hesitation. At the end of the day, Floch was never really a villain. He was just a man desperate to protect his home from being wiped out. He took extreme measures to ensure the island's survival by any means, even if he had to play the bad guy. He started as a scared recruit, someone who barely survived his first real battle, and watched everyone around him die while he lived by chance. That moment didn't turn him into some evil dictator. It turned him into someone who was desperate to prevent history from repeating itself.